Mustache Dan Fox. Video narration script. Heads up before you watch. Some names and characters here are heavily inspired by real RDR2, RDR Online characters, true, but changed up so they're not the exact same. Original story, original spin. Intro. Born in 1860, this is the story of Daniel Mustache Dan Fox, 6 feet 8, 253 pounds, a mustache you could set a watch to, and a catchphrase that means it's already too late. Well, that ain't good. 1. The beginnings. Daniel is born into a hard life with no easy path. His unstable childhood forces him to grow up fast, laying the foundation of resilience that carries him through everything ahead. 2. The face and the friendship. At 14, a street gang scars his face for life. He stitches it himself. In the same chapter, he meets Benny Ratcliffe, forging a friendship in blood and bad luck that will shape both their lives. 3. The bank robbery and prison. Dan and Benny rob a bank in Sisika. It goes wrong. Dan gets 10 years, believing Benny died in the fallout. 4. The rebuilding. Out of prison, Dan partners with Maggie Jones on a moonshine bar and builds a fence network. He gets his horse Felix and the sharp look that becomes his trademark. 5. Dan and Benny reunite. In St. Denis, Dan discovers Benny survived. A decade of grief undone in one look across a room. 6. The Cannibal Tribe episode. Dan crosses paths with a cannibal tribe on the fringes of civilization, one of the darkest survival ordeals of his life. 7. The Dam Fight. A brutal, high-stakes battle at a dam pushes Dan to his limits and hardens him further. 8. The Desert Duel. Benny is now a deputy. Dan draws first. 3 shots, 0.11 seconds. Then he burns his own palm with his cigar and watches the vultures circle. 9. The Graveyard Confrontation. 3 months later, Dan, 39, grief resurfaces as Dan is forced to face what he did to Benny out loud. 10. The Riverboat Heist. Dan teams up for a high-risk heist aboard a riverboat, proving he's still got it. 11. The Cousin's Torture. Joseph Vanderbilt's cousin, John Doe, tortures Dan in one of the most brutal stretches of his story. 12. The Danny Lee Moonshine War. A turf war against Danny Lee costs Dan dearly. Kieran Jones, Maggie's son, dies at 25. Bartholomew Braithwaite is badly burned. 13. The Final Years. Tired but unbroken, Dan spends his last years in quiet reflection, making peace with everything he's carried and buried. Outro. Daniel Mustache Dan Fox. Bartender, bounty, hunter, fence, naturalist, killer. Of his best friend in 0.11 seconds. Well, that ain't good. Original character saga. Pure imagination. With some Red Dead Online inspired beats.